Previously, on my son's missing mother knocked on my door after 12 years. My wife Natalie came home 12 years after vanishing without a word. My son Mason wouldn't even look at her. And my best friend Eric, the man who built my son's treehouse, who showed up for every birthday, every bad night, welcomed her home with flowers. She froze the second she saw him. Slowly, Natalie started remembering pieces of the place they kept her. A warehouse, a freight train at 11 o'clock, a silver lighter someone flipped open and closed without realizing it, a voice that used to whisper it's going to be all right. We chased the wrong man first, Natalie's brother Victor, before an old memory of a stopped train on Sunday mornings pointed us toward a rail yard and 6 warehouses none of us had ever once looked at twice. Detective Lisa Grant got the warrant. Tonight we go inside. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, that recap should catch you up, but I'd still go watch part 1 first if you want the full weight of what's coming. Same as always, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is on your end. I read every comment. And if this story is your kind of thing, tell us what you want to see next. We're always looking for the next one to tell. All right, let's finish this. The first warehouse was wrong. Lisa took me and 2 officers to the nearest of the 6 properties serviced by that rail yard on a Tuesday afternoon. Quiet, procedural, nothing like I expected a raid to feel. We walked through empty aisles that smelled like machine oil, not lumber, 19 support beams, not 14. No freight track passed close enough to explain a train stopping directly outside. Lisa stood in the middle of that empty floor for a long moment, jaw tight, and I watched her allow herself, for just a second, to consider that the entire lead, the trains, the schedule, 12 years of a woman's memory, might not hold up to real investigation after all. I don't want to lose this thread over one wrong building, she said, almost to herself. But I need to be honest with you, Daniel. If the next one doesn't match either, I have to start treating this as inconclusive. I didn't tell Natalie that part. I didn't have the heart. 2 nights later, she gave us the piece that changed everything, without meaning to. We were back at the kitchen table, and she mentioned, almost as an aside, that she used to be able to see a strip of orange through a gap near the roofline some mornings. A water tower, she thought, close enough that the light caught it just after sunrise. Lisa pulled up a map of the remaining 5 properties without saying a word. Only one sat within sightline of the county water tower. That was the warehouse we went to next. I stood behind the police tape at the edge of the industrial lot, watching flashlights cut through the dark inside a warehouse I'd driven past 100 times in my life and never once looked at twice. 14 beams. High ceiling. The smell of sawdust hit me the second the doors opened, exactly the way Natalie described it, and for 1 second my chest went tight with something almost like hope. This was it. This was the place. I could feel it. Lisa moved through with her team, methodical, calling out instructions I didn't fully understand. Natalie stood beside me, not moving, her eyes fixed on the doorway like she was watching something only she could see. 20 minutes later, Lisa walked back out, and I already knew from her face. It's empty, she said. Cleared out, recently, from the look of it. Dust patterns on the floor show equipment was here, and it's gone now. No furniture, no restraints, nothing that ties directly to a person being held. I'm sorry. I felt the hope collapse the way a building does when the supports finally give, not slow, all at once. The smell, I said, grasping. The beams. She described this exact place. I know, Lisa said, and I could hear how much it cost her to say what came next. But description isn't evidence, Daniel. A defense attorney would tear this apart in about 4 seconds. An empty building that smells like sawdust isn't a crime scene. I need something I can put in front of a judge. Natalie hadn't said a word since we arrived. She was still staring into that dark warehouse, arms wrapped around herself, and I understood, watching her, that some part of her had been hoping too, hoping to find something solid, something that made 12 years of nightmares real to everyone else, the way they'd been real to her the whole time. Maybe I'm wrong, she said, so quiet I almost didn't hear it. Maybe I got it wrong. You didn't get it wrong, I said. But I heard the same doubt creeping into my own voice, and I hated myself for it. Lisa was already calling her team back, already talking about closing this thread and starting the search over, when one of the forensic techs came jogging out from a side room near the back. "Detective, you need to see this." We followed her back inside, past the main floor, into a small office attached to the warehouse. The kind of room you'd walk past without a second thought, empty except for a rusted desk and bare walls. The tech had a flashlight angled low along a wall panel that sat slightly crooked, a half-inch off from the ones beside it. "Wall's not flush," she said. "Somebody patched this section, but not well." 2 officers pried the panel loose. Behind it, tucked into a gap no wider than a shoebox, sat a small collection of things someone had clearly wanted hidden and never came back for. A rag-stained dark brown with something that had long since dried. A partial print lifted clean off the metal edge of the panel itself, preserved by 12 years of still, dry air. Folded beneath the rag, a handful of photographs. Natalie, years before she vanished, candid shots taken from a distance she'd never known about. A newspaper clipping, yellowed and carefully folded, announcing Mason's Little League championship 2 summers back, his 12-year-old face circled twice in blue ink. And sitting on top of it all, half buried in dust, a silver lighter. Lisa crouched down and photographed it before she touched it, gloved fingers turning it carefully into the light. There was engraving on the back, worn but legible if you knew to look. Natalie made a sound behind me I'd never heard her make before, something between a gasp and a sob, and she gripped my arm so hard I felt her nails through my sleeve. "That's it," she said. "That's the sound. Open, closed. That's the exact one." Lisa went very still. I watched something shift behind her eyes, the particular stillness of a person's mind running backward through everything they'd already seen, searching for a piece that suddenly fit somewhere it hadn't before. "I've seen this lighter," she said slowly. "What?" "I've seen it. Recently." She was already pulling out her phone, scrolling fast through a photo folder, and I felt something cold settle into my stomach before I even understood why. The case file. The old one from 12 years ago. There were photographs pulled from your house during the initial investigation, family photos for context, victims' known associates. She found what she was looking for and turned the phone toward me. "A barbecue. Our backyard, maybe 8 years ago, before everything got easier and I let myself stop looking at old photos altogether. Mason small in the frame, maybe 5, holding a hot dog bigger than his hand, me at the grill, and beside me, laughing at something out of frame, Eric, sleeves rolled up, one hand resting on his belt, where a silver lighter sat clipped to his waistband, engraving catching the sun. The same engraving, the same lighter. I don't remember dropping to my knees. I remember the concrete floor of that office coming up fast, and Natalie's hands on my shoulders, and Lisa's voice saying my name from somewhere very far away. 12 years. Every birthday. Every Sunday dinner. The treehouse he built with his own hands, board by board, while I stood there thinking I was the luckiest man alive to have a friend like that. I thought about every single time he'd hugged me, every time he'd told me he understood what I was going through, that he was there for me. That Mason would always have a second father no matter what happened. I thought about the watch on his wrist the night Natalie came home. The way she'd frozen. The thing I hadn't understood, hadn't wanted to understand. Because understanding it meant admitting that the man who'd stood beside me through the worst 12 years of my life had been the reason those 12 years happened at all. "Daniel." Lisa's voice, closed now, steady in a way that told me she needed me to hear the next part clearly. "I need you to think carefully. Has Eric had access to this location? Any business connection? Any reason his prints or belongings would legitimately be here?" I already knew the answer before she finished asking. "He owns a security company," I said. My own voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Municipal contracts, warehouses, lots, industrial sites. It's half his business. He'd have reason to be in 100 buildings like this one." Lisa nodded slowly, and I watched her expression change into something I recognized from every cop show I'd never taken seriously until this exact moment. The look of someone who has just watched every scattered piece of a puzzle fall into a single, terrible shape. "That's motive, means, and now physical evidence in the same location," she said quietly. "Daniel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think before you answer." "What?" "Who else knew we were investigating this warehouse?" I stared at her, because I had told him. 2 nights ago, over the phone, the way I told Eric everything. Because for 12 years, he'd been the person I called when I didn't know how to hold something by myself. I had told my best friend exactly where the police were about to look. And somewhere in the dark outside that warehouse, the only question left standing was the one I couldn't make myself say out loud yet. How had he been standing beside us the entire time? Lisa didn't wait until morning. She had a name, a lighter, a fingerprint that would take days to confirm but didn't need to be confirmed for her to move. She had photographs of things no innocent man should have kept hidden behind a warehouse wall. She had enough for a warrant, and she had officers heading to Eric's house within the hour. I want to come, I said. I know, Lisa said. That's why I'm asking you to ride with me instead of driving yourself. Natalie was already reaching for her coat. Natalie, I started. Don't, she said. Quiet but immovable. I have spent 12 years having no say in what happened to me. I am not staying home for this part. Lisa looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once. Stay behind me. Let me handle the arrest. But you can be there. We pulled up outside Eric's house a little after 10. His truck was still in the driveway. Every light in the house was on, and through the front window I could see him moving fast between rooms. The particular urgency of a man packing a bag he never expected to need. He never made it to the truck. 2 officers met him on the porch steps just as he came through the front door, suitcase in hand, and I watched something in his face shift the second he saw the badges. Not shock exactly. Something closer to a man realizing a debt had finally come due. Dan. He said my name like it still meant something between us. His eyes moved past me to Natalie, and for just a second, something flickered there I couldn't name. Natalie, you're here. Where else would I be, she said. Flat, steady. Lisa stepped forward before either of us could say more. Eric Collins, we need to ask you some questions about a property on Route 9. I don't know what you think you found, Eric said. And his voice had gone smooth, practiced, the same easy calm that had talked half this town into trusting him for 20 years. I own properties all over this county, detective. If my prints are somewhere, it's because it's my business to be there. Funny, Lisa said, pulling a photo from a folder and holding it up. Because this lighter was hidden behind a wall panel in a locked office nobody's supposed to know about, along with a fingerprint that's going to match yours once the lab confirms it. Along with photographs of a woman you've called your best friend's wife for 12 years, photographs she never posed for, and a newspaper clipping of a 12-year-old's Little League championship circled in your handwriting. Something in Eric's face went very still. Careful bookkeeping, he said, but the smoothness had cracked. None of that proves. I know your voice, Natalie said. Everyone stopped. She stepped forward, past me, close enough that Eric had to look directly at her for the first time in 12 years without the safety of a room full of other people. You used to say it's going to be all right, she said. Every time. Like you actually believed it. I used to lie there in the dark hating how much I wanted to believe you too. Her voice didn't shake. I've heard a lot of voices try to comfort me since I came home, Eric. None of them sound like yours. But yours, I would know yours anywhere. I spent 12 years learning it. Eric didn't say anything for a long time. Then, quietly, something in him gave way. The company was drowning, he said. Not to Lisa. To me. You remember how bad things got that year before Natalie disappeared. You didn't know, because I made sure you never knew. Gambling debts. Real ones. I was skimming from the municipal contracts to stay afloat. And Natalie found out, I said. She found a discrepancy in an invoice, nothing dramatic. She was helping me organize paperwork, being a good friend, being Natalie. He laughed short and hollow, nothing like the warm laugh I'd known for 12 years. She said she needed to think about it, said she'd talk to you that night. I panicked, Dan. I panicked, and I paid men I never should have known to do something I told myself was temporary. Temporary, Natalie repeated. Days. A week, maybe. His voice cracked. And then days became weeks, and I didn't know how to undo it without destroying everything, and eventually. He stopped. Eventually what? I said. Eventually, I stopped trying to fix it. He looked at the ground, Because as long as she was gone, you needed me, Dan. Really needed me. I told myself I was doing something good, being there for you and Mason. Some sick part of me started believing it. The photos, Natalie said. The clipping. Why keep those? He didn't answer right away. I told myself it was for safekeeping, he said finally. In case anything ever happened and someone needed proof of who you were, who Mason was. That's what I told myself. He looked up, and for the first time his composure fully broke. It wasn't safekeeping. I know that now. I don't have a better answer than that. You destroyed us, I said. You stood in my kitchen and told me you understood my pain. You held my son at his mother's empty birthday parties and let him call you. My voice broke and I couldn't finish the sentence. I know, Eric said, and for the first time he sounded like he actually did. Behind me, I heard the front door creak. Mason stood there in the doorway of Eric's house. He must have followed us, must have climbed into the back of Lisa's car without either of us noticing. 13 years old and standing perfectly still in a stranger's porch light, having clearly heard enough to understand everything. Eric turned toward him slowly. Mason, he said softly. Whatever happens now, you'll always be like a son to me. Mason didn't say a word. He looked at Eric for a long moment, longer than I expected, long enough that I couldn't tell what was happening behind his eyes. Then he walked forward, past Eric, past the suitcase still sitting on the porch, and came to stand beside me instead. Close, without looking back once. I put my hand on his shoulder and felt him shaking. Lisa gave the signal. The officers moved in, and I watched them turn Eric around, watched the cuffs close around wrists that had built a treehouse board by board, while quietly stealing 12 years from the family he claimed to love. Eric didn't resist. He just looked at me one last time. You think I stole 12 years from you, he said. I didn't answer him. There wasn't an answer that would have meant anything. I stole them from all three of you, he said, quiet enough that only I fully caught it. They started walking him toward the car. Natalie stepped in front of him one last time, and the officers paused just long enough to let her. You spent 12 years trying to erase me from this family, she said. Eric looked at her. Something in his face finally, completely gave up trying to be anything other than what it was. I know, he said. You failed, Natalie said. Then the door shut, and the car pulled away down the same street where he used to bring lilies and casseroles and the kind of comfort I'd trusted with my whole life. Mason stood next to me shaking in the porch light, and Natalie stood a few feet away with her arms wrapped around herself, watching the taillights disappear. I put my arm around my son. Natalie came and stood on his other side, and for the first time in 12 years, none of us said anything at all. There was nothing left to say that the silence didn't already understand. 6 months is long enough to relearn a house, long enough to relearn a family. The town took it hard in its own way. People who'd shaken Eric's hand at Rotary breakfasts, who'd hired call-in security for their store alarms, who'd sat next to him at church potlucks for 20 years, couldn't reconcile the man they'd known with the one splashed across the local news, Mrs. The. Kowalski next door told me, almost apologetically, that she'd always thought Eric was exactly the kind of man this town needed more of. I didn't have the heart to tell her I'd thought the same thing. For 12 years, while he sat at my table pretending to grieve with me over the wife he'd taken, nobody had really known him. I was only starting to understand that I hadn't either. Natalie went to therapy twice a week, a small office downtown with a woman named Dr. Reyes, who specialized in something the paperwork called prolonged captivity trauma, a phrase I still couldn't say out loud without my throat tightening. Some days Natalie came home quiet, worn thin by whatever she'd had to dig up and look at directly. Other days she came home lighter, like she'd set something down she'd been carrying so long she forgot it'd weight. I went to a few sessions myself at Dr. Reyes's suggestion. Not for Natalie. For the guilt I'd carried since the day she disappeared, the guilt that had followed me into burning buildings and out of them for 12 years, the one that whispered if you'd just picked her up from the store? It took months to say out loud in that office. It took Dr. Reyes exactly one sentence to answer it. Guilt, she said, is what you feel when you think you did something wrong. What happened to your wife wasn't something you did. It was something done to her. Those aren't the same thing, Daniel, no matter how long you've made them share a room in your head. I didn't believe her the first time she said it. By month 6, I finally did. Mason came around slower, the way 13-year-olds do everything slower when it actually matters. He didn't announce it. There was no big conversation, no dramatic apology for the months he'd spent refusing to say the word mom out loud. It just happened in pieces. Sitting a little closer to her on the couch, asking her opinion on a school project, letting her fix his collar before a school photo without flinching away. The real turn came on an ordinary Saturday when Mason went looking in the garage for an old baseball glove and came back inside holding a shoebox instead. I recognized it the second I saw it. It had sat in the back corner of that garage for over a decade, tucked behind Christmas decorations, and I'd always assumed it held old tax documents or warranty papers, nothing worth opening. Mason set it on the kitchen table and lifted the lid, and I watched his face change. Cards, 13 of them handmade, some on lined notebook paper gone soft and yellow with age, others on scraps of cardboard, one on the back of what looked like an old grocery receipt. Each one addressed in handwriting that had clearly gotten shakier and more determined with each passing year, the same way. To my Mason, happy birthday wherever you are. Natalie stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, one hand pressed to her mouth. I didn't know if they'd ever find you, she said, so quiet it barely carried. I didn't have paper most years. I used whatever I could find. I wrote them anyway, every single year on your birthday because I needed you to know, somewhere, that I hadn't forgotten. That I was still counting. Mason didn't say anything. He sat down slowly at the kitchen table and read every single one, start to finish, his jaw tight the way mine gets when I'm trying not to cry in front of people. 13 years of a mother who never once stopped being a mother, even from somewhere none of us could reach her. When he finished the last one, he stood up. He walked to the drawer where Eleanor kept the old preschool drawings, the ones Natalie had gone through months earlier on the nursery floor, and pulled out the one with 3 figures under a sun, Dad, M.E., and the small unlabeled girl with question marks where a face should be. He found a pen on the counter, uncapped it, and, without a word, wrote Mom beneath the small figure in careful 13-year-old handwriting. Then he crossed the kitchen, the same kitchen where she used to dance in flour dust, the same kitchen where he'd once refused to look at her, and he stopped in front of her, the drawing and the cards both held against his chest. Mom, he said. The word landed different than it ever had before, not tentative, not a test, just true. He paused. You're home. Natalie's knees seemed to give slightly, and Mason caught her, and I watched my son hold his mother the way I used to hold him when he was small enough to fit against my chest, and something in that kitchen finally, quietly, closed a wound that had been open for 12 years. We had dinner that night the way we used to, before any of this, before the word Natalie became a silence in our house, instead of a name we said out loud. Nothing special. Chicken, rice, a salad, Mason complained about eating. Ordinary noise, ordinary forks against ordinary plates. Halfway through, Mason told some ridiculous story about a kid at school who tried to convince their science teacher that his dog ate his lab report, and Natalie laughed. Really laughed, head back, one hand pressed against her chest, the kind of laugh that comes out before you can decide whether to let it. I stopped eating. I sat there with my fork halfway to my mouth, and I realized I hadn't heard that sound, that exact, specific, unmistakable sound in 12 years. I'd forgotten what it was like to have it in the room. I'd forgotten, somewhere in all that grief, that it had ever existed at all. Natalie caught me staring and raised an eyebrow, still smiling. What? I just shook my head, smiling back, feeling something settle into place in my chest that had been unsettled since the year Mason was born. Nothing, I said. Then, quieter, just for her. You never stopped being home. She reached across the table and took my hand, and Mason kept talking about his ridiculous classmate like nothing had happened at all, like this was just an ordinary Tuesday in an ordinary house belonging to an ordinary family, which, after everything, was exactly what it was. 3 people at a kitchen table, 12 years stolen, and finally, at last, given back.